Echoes of the Veil, Episode 3, Marked by Shadows. The world returned in flashes and fragments, blue lights swirling, nerve-deep aches, and the thick taste of blood on his tongue. For a moment, Echo was aware only of sensation, cold, biting through his skin, distant warmth pressing at his side, the pressure of fingers knotted tight through his own. Every breath sounded wrong, like the air had changed or he had changed. Each inhale stung with memory, pulsed with new pain, where the spiral mark burned into his palm. Around him, mist and stone tried to focus into shapes, but kept warping, folding, threatening to dissolve beneath the weight of everything the veil demanded. He blinked, vision slashing through blue haze, finally settling. Lira was there, face streaked with dirt and blood, her eyes holding that edge between panic and ferocity. She hadn't let go of his arm. Her own was slick with blood. Shadows on her shoulder told the story of claws that nearly cut too deep, but she was smiling, thin and wild, as if defiance alone kept her upright. "Echo," she said, voice cracked, almost lost. "You stayed." He tried to answer, found only a drowned whisper. The ground beneath crumbled, and for a moment he thought they had sunk into the ruined circle, become part of it. Above them, the mist rolled back, pulled by invisible tides. The ancient pillars stood broken but resilient, spiral symbols glowing faint blue, pulsing in time with Echo's chest. There was silence, terrible, pure, like all the world was holding its breath. From the shattered doorway, a new shadow moved. Tall, hooded, more memory than flesh. Its face was lost in folds of fabric, hands hidden, but Echo felt its gaze, cold, intricate, measuring. Lira drew him closer, knife half raised, but Echo felt a strange certainty. If this figure wanted them dead, there would be no ritual, no warning, only silence falling. The figure paused, head tilting like it was listening for a sound that had not yet happened. Echo dared a question, voice hoarse. "Who are you?" A pause. The silence hummed. "You carry the mark now," the figure said. Voice less sound, more the pressure of wind caught in old wood. "And so does she. That means the veil has chosen. For what? You'll see." Lira spat. "We aren't yours. The veil can keep its warnings." But Echo's heart hammered with a new certainty. Something inside him was different. Something in the ritual. Something in surviving. The figure motioned to the spiral now glowing hot in Echo's palm. "That mark is hunger, memory, and promise. It will bring you closer to what you seek, or it will devour you. You are not the first. You may not be the last." Without another word, the figure slipped backward, dissolving rapidly into mist, echoing off old stone, whispering, "Survive or join what sleeps beneath." Echo tried to stand, legs trembling. Lira steadied him. "Whatever that was, it's gone, but it left something, Echo, and the veil, it never gives, only takes." He gripped her hand, still shaking. The world ahead was black, strange, and filled with eyes, each watching, each knowing more than either could ever understand. Far in the distance, the crows screamed. Far below, the spiral pulsed, calling. Echo and Lira turned from the ruin, every step a promise. If they survived, they would find meaning in the darkness. If not, The veil would have names to remember. Sometime after the spiral faded from blinding blue to a sullen, moonlit shimmer, Echo and Lira staggered away from the ruins. Feet dragged, breath uneven. The land sloped gently downwards, soft with moss and scattered leaves that glistened in uncertain light. Echo could feel every injury. His body was heavy, each muscle remembering the fight, but also something more, a strange vibration beneath his skin, like the spiral mark was a tune only he could hear. They didn't speak much at first. Lyra focused on the sound of the crows and on distant disturbances in the mist, always one hand poised near her blade. She rarely looked back, trusting Echo's silence behind her. They found temporary shelter beneath a bent, hollow tree, its trunk wide and rotted, but firm enough to shield them from gusting winds. Inside, pale fungi glowed with a dim pulse, not quite warm, but a comfort among shapeless shadows. Lyra tore what was left of her sleeve, wrapping Echo's bleeding thigh with slow, careful hands. When she finished, she leaned against the wood, exhausted, her voice barely more than a hum. "What do you feel?" Echo hesitated, unsure which answer to trust, pain, fear, or the odd sense of connection to the veil, awakened since the ritual. "Like something in me's watching, listening." She nodded. "It marked us both. I can sense things, shapes moving, not quiet, like before. Still, it's pain most of all." Outside, the mist pressed hard against their shelter, now and then flexing as some larger shape moved past, the world refusing rest, even to those half-broken. Their breaths slowed as exhaustion crept in, but neither truly slept. In that dayless world, rest could be a death sentence. Echo whispered, "Do you think it changed us?" Lyra's eyes glinted. "Everything changes us here. Some things, hard to undo." She turned her face to the wall, raked with old scars. Echo watched her for a long time, thinking of what the hooded figure said, of mysteries half answered and powers he didn't want, but maybe couldn't avoid. The spiral in his palms still tingled, sometimes hot, sometimes cold. Around midnight, Echo woke to murmurs. Shapes flitted across the opening, a pale child's hand, a moth's wings, the suggestion of words in tongues he never learned. He stared, trying to blink away sleep, but the mist kept painting new nightmares on the walls. Lyra was awake too, blade drawn, eyes wide in the faint light. Silence. Listening. Hearts pounding, the old and new pain taking turns. Echo wanted to ask so many things, what memories she kept, what she feared, how much she believed in finding hope inside the veil. But he stayed silent. Words right then were too sharp. At some point, a cold wind swept through their hollow. The fungi shivered. Echo felt the spiral grow colder, and the world changed just a little more. When the morning light crept in, thin, silver, uncertain, they were still alive. Lyra stretched, checked her knives. Echo stood, feeling the ache, but stronger somehow. They packed their scattered supplies in silence and stepped out, the mist swirling around them. The ruins behind had vanished from sight, but neither looked back. Each step deeper into the veil now felt like a new test. Echo knew. Surviving the ritual hadn't freed them. It had only begun something bigger.
Veil seemed to warp perception. As Echo and Lira moved deeper into tangled woods, colors faded. Only the spiral on Echo's palm shone with a possibility he didn't yet understand. Every step forced new caution. Roots snagged boots, branches swiped at skin, hunger crept in, gnawing at Echo's stomach, making each movement slow and deliberate. Lira led, picking through small plants, whispering which ones to avoid and which could help. The world responded to their marks. Sometimes a bird would circle only to dive away. Sometimes the wind would gust and carry whispers Echo could barely catch. He tried to focus. There was a faint pressure in his palm, but nothing dramatic. Sometimes in certain places or certain moments, a memory would tickle his mind, a flash of the battle, a hint that the mark could sense threats or pathways, but nothing more. When he reached for it mentally, the sensation slipped away, replaced by the simple need to survive. They found a path bordered by stones, mostly hidden by weeds. Lira paused. This used to mean a safe crossing long ago. Now, maybe, it's only a trap. Echo tested each stone with his foot, patient. One shifted easily, almost guiding his step. Lira watched closely. Looks normal, but nothing is anymore. Further in, Echo sensed something new. Not a power, more a tension in the air, like a thread pulling him forward. He couldn't use it. Not yet. It felt locked away, dependent on his exhaustion, on the right chance. Hunger grew. Lira pulled roots, boiled them over a small flame. The meal left their mouths tasting bitter. Their strength barely improved. Echo tried again to feel the spiral. Maybe it would heal, maybe reveal, but all it did was pulse quietly. That night, as they camped near a ruined statue of a kneeling figure, Echo had a dream. He stood in a vast void, the spiral glowing in front of him, but every time he reached out, a wall rose up, pain, fear, memory, blocking his way. He woke up hungry, resolved, and determined. Whatever lay inside the mark, he would have to earn piece by piece, through risk and learning, through the slow, sharp trials the Veil had planned. Lira handed him water, scratched and tired. We've survived worse. Let's move. Echo's palm tingled, promising nothing. The journey continued, slow, patient, every day a battle for understanding. Each failure, a lesson. Each step, an invitation to try again.
Their pace slowed to what felt inhuman, making each meter they covered a small quest for breath and certainty. Neither Echo nor Lira cared for words, while hunger gnawed and every shadow could hide the end. Yet the silence between them thickened into something more. Neither trust nor suspicion, but a shared state of animal endurance. There, in the white core of the Veil, loneliness was less dangerous than complacency. Somewhere in that endless mist, they walked. Trees grew denser, trunks gnarled by centuries and the sorrow of the land. The spiral in Echo's hand had ceased to tingle constantly, now only reacting at the edge of awareness, a slight pressure when eyes watched from above, a sudden chill when footsteps echoed behind them, unseen. Days blurred. They passed the remains of other travelers, a rusted lantern, a diary with pages unreadable, a bone carved with symbols. The diary sat open at a single phrase written in jagged hand. It only lets us through if we walk the same pain twice. Lira read it, lips pressed tight. Echo queried the meaning, but she only shrugged. Veil wisdom was always cruelly simple and maddeningly obscure. They began rationing, not just food, but trust. Each foraged meal was split with ceremony, small roots or pale berries or the rare tiny fish snatched from a brackish stream. Water was boiled amid constant glances at the mist. Firelight was kept low, for the shadows near their campfire hearth always seemed alive, flickering around the spiral tattoo. At night, Echo tried to decipher the change. The spiral grew cold when monsters approached, a negative presence, warning instead of empowering. In his slow dreaming, he found himself reliving the last moments in the ruins, the chorus of mourners, the light, the cost. Sometimes, Lira moaned in her sleep, clutching the glass fragment left by the ritual so fiercely it drew blood. On the fourth morning, sharp with exhaustion, the veil presented them a test that could not be avoided. They heard cries, animal, shrill, quickly silenced. Lira crouched immediately, signaling Echo to freeze. They watched as a beast, part wolf, part rot, fur hanging off like strips of old cloth, dragged a wounded bird into its lair, disappearing behind an outcrop grown thick with fungus. Lira's whisper, "We need the food, but it's a risk." Echo felt a surge in the spiral, an itch of dread, but he was too weak to ignore the need. Together, slow and silent, they circled the beast's den. The veil made everything feel like a test from something ancient and cruel, somewhere between natural law and divine punishment. Inside, the beast dozed, sated. Lira drew her dagger. Echo moved to find a piece of old wood to use as a club. Adrenaline made his knees tingle and the spiral warm, but still not strong, more of a warning to not overstep. They struck, Lira disabling the creature with practiced movements, Echo clubbing when teeth snapped too close. The scuffle was desperate. Echo's arm was bitten, blood welled, but the spiral did nothing to heal, only pulsed harder as pain racked his nerves. When it was done, they dragged the carcass to the edge of a clearing. Lira skinned and cleaned it, both eating with no pleasure, just survival. After wounds were cleaned, Echo pressed his palm to the spiral, hoping for something to dull the pain. Instead, a set of images danced in his mind's eye, his own hand gripping a weapon, Lira's face, eyes hollow and persistent, the monster's jaw snapping shut in emptiness. He realized for the first time that the mark had given him a memory, not new ability, but old skill clarified by pain and victory. Lira saw his distant expression. Another trick from the veil? I think it helps me learn, just a little, if I pay the price. She nodded. Some pay more. That's why power doesn't come easy. As night fell, Echo noticed the world grew even quieter than before. Old trails faded. Even Lira hesitated more, second-guessing her path. The spiral flared once when Echo accidentally crossed a makeshift trap, averting a poisoned thorn, then went still. They followed river bends through brambles so thick the moon never touched ground. Echo practiced his new awareness. He studied how Lira tied knots, set traps, foraged, turning every small hardship into a lesson. No miracles came, only bruised hands, tired minds, aching bones, and the spiral's cold promise. Everything earned, nothing given. On the seventh night, they reached a clearing where the mist danced in unnatural circles, ghostly shapes twirling, always just out of reach. Both stopped. Hunger and hope mixed in their veins. Echo wondered out loud, are these the next test or the first warning? Lira shrugged, voice raw. If we pass, we live. If not, we feed the veil. They set up camp at the edge of the ghostly court, backs to a crooked tree, ready for new dangers and new ways to suffer, endure, and, if allowed, evolve. The mark on Echo's hand remained cold, watchful, silent. waiting for another price to be paid. The days blended, heavy and colorless. Echo and Lira moved through the mist as if shackled, their trajectories dictated not by hope, but necessity. The spiral mark faded into the background of Echo's mind, so faint some mornings he questioned if the ritual had truly happened at all. Their struggle for survival was constant. Hunger remained sharp, and the only relief came from the rare, bitter roots found beneath fallen logs. Lyra's eyes grew darker. Sometimes they spoke, sometimes not. Increasing silence filled the spaces between words, making the bond between them durable but quiet, almost resentful. Each day brought pain, bruises, shallow cuts, exhaustion. Sometimes Echo thought he could sense danger a little sooner, a shape in the mist, the sudden hush of birds. But it was fleeting, unreliable, never enough to truly help. He tried meditating at night, focusing all his will on the spiral, hoping it would unlock something. Nothing happened. Lira was pragmatic. Some things grow only in the worst soil. If the veil wants us to change, it'll make us suffer until we earn it. Her lessons helped Echo more than the mark, making tighter knots, tracking the brittle prints of prey, finding water that didn't rot the mouth. Every night was trial. Some nights interrupted by circling beasts, other nights broken by nightmares that forced Echo to wake up gasping for air. He dreamed of the spiral burning his hand, but waking found only the old chill. Not heat, not revelation. After nearly a week, Echo felt only a slight difference. His stamina improved, pain was more tolerable, and his reflexes were a fraction quicker. No power, no magic, just a product of endless misery and repetition. He did not sense monsters, did not heal faster, did not grow stronger except by imperceptible degrees. Lira sat one night sharpening her blade, the sound steady and comforting. Echo looked at his palm. Is it ever enough? She answered without pausing. Never. Not here. Every day you survive is just one more lesson, not a prize. A single crow called overhead, lost in fog. Echo studied the markings in the dirt, dreamed again, but in the morning, everything remained the same. They continued, battered and unchanged, forging themselves into survivors without gifts, only endurance, cleverness, routine. The veil watched, patient, cruel. Evolution would only come if paid in blood, days, and hard choices. They moved slowly, each hour a quiet battle. The mist twisted above, sometimes clinging so close it became impossible to see past their own breath. Echo and Lira developed routines born of necessity. Each day started with careful scouting, fingers probing damp soil for evidence of last night's visitors. Every evening ended with the drawing of a rough perimeter marked with broken sticks, glass shards, and anything they could use to create alarm. Their journey brought them into a tangle of ruins, half swallowed by sickly vines. Stone steps led down into shadow, choked by brambles. These signs of a once great place now served only as reminders of failure, a civilization devoured by the veil and left to rot. Echo watched Lira navigate their descent, eyes sharp, body tense. She gestured for silence, tracing a path between the pillars. Echo followed, scraping his boots, weighing each step as if the stones might betray him. They paused inside a grand hall, collapsed ceiling above filtering weak light onto the floor. Statues lined the walls, each broken at a different angle. Some held ancient weapons, others clutched their throats, faces contorted in silent agony. Dust swam in the air, swirling in patterns as if each mote also struggled to be seen. Echo explored, careful not to touch anything. His spiral mark tingled, perhaps a warning, perhaps nothing more than his own nerves. Lira crouched near a statue, examining old scratches. She whispered, "This place was important once. Notice how every figure faces the door? something came for them. They pressed deeper, the air thick and heavy. Rhythms changed, the wind echoed in subterranean passages. Distant water dripped, and somewhere in the walls, skittering claws marked the loneliness of exile. For hours they searched. Echo experimented with the spiral, pressing his hand to old stone, hoping for a sign. All he felt was cold and fatigue. Midway, Lira found a trap, an ancient dart, poisoned and brittle now, but deadly when fresh. She showed Echo how it worked, broke it down for spare parts, and reset it farther down the path to keep their rear safe. Rations ran low. Echo's hunger gnawed. Lira found edible moss, bitter but filling. Outside, dusk crept in with little fanfare. The hall took on new menace, as faint howls from the veil whispered through cracks. Echo lay awake, tracing every shadow with his eyes. The statue seemed to move in the half-light, faces shifting, always watching. He tried to remember what warmth felt like. Lira sat nearby, blade in hand, carving delicate lines on a scrap of wood. A rare moment of softer focus. "No one's safe here. Not really," she murmured. Echo nodded, feeling every ache in his muscles, every memory left on ruins. Night arrived, sharp, freezing, riddled with sounds. Sometime after midnight, something shifted far down the corridor, a dull scraping followed by the soft thump of a body falling. Echo and Lira readied their weapons, senses raw, hearts pounding. Nothing arrived, but the tension remained, a reminder that their progress through the veil would always be marked by suffering, curiosity, and the threat that survival might be only temporary. They pressed onward. Each new step was a story. Stolen food, near missteps, the distant promise that whatever evolution waited in Echo's mark, it refused to come easily.
Night in the ruins was fundamentally different from anywhere else. The cold didn't just seep into bones, it pressed straight through, chilling breath and spirit alike. Echo and Lira hunched together near the remnants of a cracked column, a single ember fire between them casting uneven shadows along the shattered facades. Exhaustion dulled the senses, but did not defeat vigilance. Every so often, Echo would see Lira's eyes flash, alert to a new sound, or perhaps haunted by the memory of what once occurred in such halls. Above, parts of the ceiling groaned, sending flakes of old plaster raining down like dry tears. Time moved oddly. Sometimes an hour passed while they played at sleep, only to spring awake at the sound of something scuttling nearby. Sometimes minutes felt as stretched as years. Echo's mark tingled, rarely, less an alarm, more a sigh of discomfort or warning when he was close to sleep. Their conversation, when it came, was whispered, made of half-confessions. Lira spoke of a city she'd never seen but wanted to reach. A life on the other side, where the veil did not exist. A place with colored banners, warm bread, no monsters. Her voice faltered. Echo suspected that hope was as brittle as the ceiling. Echo, in turn, admitted little. He did not remember his past, but each day pieced together a mind less naive, more cautious, someone who learned the names of hunger and fear as different chapters, not the same page. Distantly, a series of howls rose and fell. The sound made the statue seem to lean closer, as if eager to hear whether Echo and Lira would survive longer than those carved in stone. Near dawn, sleep overtook them, shallow and treacherous. A dream came. Echo saw himself walking through a field of mirrors, each reflecting a possible version of his future, one triumphant, one broken, one monstrous. At the heart of the field, something watched him, faceless, its presence a whisper. Nothing is given, all is asked. He woke gasping, sweat freezing on his forehead. The spiral stung, sharp and sour, but faded as consciousness returned. No power, no sudden insight, only the grind and trial of another day. Outside, the mist carried new voices, close, whispering with meaning Echo could almost understand. He listened, straining for any hint, but when he looked to Lyra for a sign, her face was unreadable. She had heard nothing. They prepared to move. The fire was doused, ashes carefully scattered. Lyra led them through a new corridor, lower and tighter, the kind built for desperation, not glory. There, in the damp, Echo's patience was tested again, a maze of stone and shadow, each passage echoing their own steps back at them. Sunlight, where it snuck in, looked thin and tired, broken by colored glass that stained dust blue, green, and gold for just a heartbeat. Along the wall, Echo found markings, crude spirals, and impossible equations etched by steady, unmad hands. He studied them, tracing a finger along the lines, but nothing stirred in the spiral within his palm, just the faintest hint of recognition, a sense that someone long ago had walked a path as slow, bitter, and determined as his own. Lyra called to him in hush, her outline blurred by dust and cold, a reminder that in the veil, whoever lost sight of their partner usually lost something more. They pressed deeper, careful and slow. Echo realized he had learned to wait, to watch, to be patient even with suffering. That, he finally admitted to himself, was perhaps the veil's first gift. As the new day began, they prepared for what they knew would be another trial. The ruins behind, the path ahead murky and cruel. Echo's and Lyra's story moving forward at its own relentless pace. The veil was patient, and so they would be too.
As Echo and Lyra emerged from the winding maze of ruined corridors, dawn fought to claim the sky. Mist rolled lower and thicker than any morning before, swirling beneath their feet in restless currents. For the first time in days, the oppressive silence of the veil cracked. A pulse, distant but definite, threaded through the fog like a breath the world was holding. The forest ahead waited, full of splinters. To their left, a gulch yawned, filled with stagnant water and pale weeds that glimmered like coins. On their right, skeletal trees marked the border of a clearing. No bird called, no wind broke the tension. Lyra paused, gaze focused on something unseen in the mist. "We're being watched," she whispered. Every syllable measured. Her hand held Echo's arm in a way he'd grown used to, never quite gentle, always a warning. Echo nodded. He could feel it too, not with his mark, not with magic, but with the language of hunted things, the sense that countless eyes, no longer shy, peered through dew and shadow. They stepped into the clearing. The temperature dropped instantly, breath coming out in plumes. Lyra signaled for caution. Echo's fingers closed around his battered knife. A hush descended. Then, footsteps behind them, not beast nor man, but an echo. A shadow flitted at the edge of vision and then resolved into something half-remembered from the ritual. A hooded, faceless figure, its robes trailing through dew and dust. The spiral in Echo's hand pulsed, not hot, not cold, just a pull. The figure raised its arm, slow and deliberate, revealing not a weapon, but a mirror. Small, cracked, the glass stained with old blood or rust. It did not look at either of them. Instead, it set the mirror on a stone and stepped away. No words were spoken. The mist pressed tighter, bringing with it a low, insistent hum, something that made Echo's bones ache and his mind stretch for meaning just out of reach. Lyra's voice broke. "We want us to see. Don't blink." They approached together. Echo looked into the mirror and saw not his own face, but a field of spirals, shapes moving between them, sometimes Lyra, sometimes himself, sometimes the monstrous, and sometimes something yet to come. For a heartbeat, he saw the hooded figure's eyes reflected, endlessly deep, as if the veil itself was looking back. The humming grew, a sound that was not sound, a call that was not quite pain. The mark on Echo's hand seared, heartbeat matching the rhythm, his breath catching. Something rumbled in the woods. Large shapes moved, silent and patient, circling. Above, crows wheeled, forming a broken ring that nearly blotted out the sun. The clearing darkened further. Lira moved closer, her own hand trembling for the first time since Echo had known her. The air was so heavy, Echo could taste metal. There was no promise of safety, only the certain knowledge that they were at the center of something far older and larger than their suffering, something that required them to look, to witness. The humming crested and broke. For a split second, the world spun. Echo glimpsed ruins melting, forest burning, a mask splitting in two. Lira screamed, a sound half human, half memory. The light faded. The mirror surface shattered, raining motes of silver dust onto the hungry ground. Silence again. The mist drifted. The hooded figure was gone. But something had changed. Echo and Lira both knew it. The veil, at last, had truly noticed them. And as the sun forced its way through the fog for an instant, a path opened at the far side of the clearing, beckoning, dangerous, promising no mercy. Behind them, in the ruins, a new chorus began to wail. They stood side by side, battered but unbroken, staring down the path that would decide what they'd become.